Historical and cultural perspectives on the elements. The concept of the four elements, earth, air, fire, and water, has roots in many ancient cultures and spiritual traditions around the world. These elements were seen as the essential building blocks of nature and the universe, influencing everything from philosophy to medicine, magic, and religion. In this lesson, we'll explore how different cultures viewed the elements and integrated them into their worldviews. Understanding the historical and cultural significance of the elements helps deepen our own connection to these forces and magical practices. The Greek classical elements, the origins of the four elements. The classical four elements, earth, air, fire, and water, were first formalized in ancient Greece by the philosopher Empedocles around 450 BCE. He proposed that everything in the world was composed of these four elements in varying combinations. According to his theory, the elements were eternal and unchanging, but they combined and separated to form the changing world around us. This idea was further developed by Plato and Aristotle, who assigned different qualities to each element. Earth was cold and dry, air was hot and wet, fire was hot and dry, water was cold and wet. These qualities corresponded to physical properties in the natural world and were thought to influence not just the physical realm, but also the mind and spirit. In ancient Greek medicine, this theory of elements was linked to the concept of humors, where each element was associated with bodily fluids that determine one's health and temperament. Eastern philosophies, the five elements, Wu Jing. In Chinese philosophy, the concept of the elements is similar but includes five elements rather than four: wood, fire, earth, metal, water. Known as the Wu Jing, these five elements represent different phases or states of transformation in nature. Unlike the Western model, which views the elements as static building blocks, the Chinese system sees them as dynamic forces that are constantly interacting, growing, and decaying. Each element is associated with specific seasons, directions, organs, and emotions. Wood: spring, growth, east, liver, anger. Fire: summer, heat, south, heart, joy. Earth: late summer, stability, center, spleen, worry. Metal: autumn, decay, west, lunds, grief. Water: winter, cold, north, kidneys, fear. In Chinese medicine and martial arts, balancing the elements within the body and the environment is crucial for health and harmony. This philosophy also informs practices like feng shui, where the placement of objects and structures aligns with the elemental forces to create balance in a space. Indian tradition, the tattvas and the Panchamahabhutas. In Hindu philosophy, the five elements known as Panchamahabhutas. I butchered that, I'm definitely sure of that. Please forgive me, that is a difficult word for me to say. They are earth, Prithvi, water, Apas, fire, Agni, air, Vayu, ether, Akasha. Okay, it wasn't so bad. These elements are closely connected to the human body, the senses, and the chakras. Each element corresponds to a specific sense: earth, smell; water, taste; fire, sight; air, touch; ether, sound. In yogic and tantric practices, balancing these elements within the body is important for spiritual awakening and inner harmony. The tattvas are also used in meditation to focus on different energies within the body. Celtic and Druidic traditions, the elements in nature. The Celts and Druids revered nature and saw the elements as living forces that existed within all things. While their exact beliefs varied across regions and tribes, the elements were deeply intertwined within their spirituality. The elements were often linked to specific deities and sacred spaces. For example, Earth represented the stability of the land, fertility, and growth. It was often associated with goddess figures like Danu or Gaia. Air was linked to the mind, communication, and the soul. Druids would call upon the wind to carry their words and spells and rituals. Fire was seen as a transformative force used in rituals for purification and change. Fire festivals like Beltane were key to Celtic celebrations. Water. Water was associated with healing and intuition. Sacred wells, rivers, and springs were important to Druidic practices. For the Celts, the balance of the elements was essential to maintaining harmony with the natural world. Alchemy and Hermeticism, the elements in Western occultism. In medieval Europe, alchemy became a dominant tradition that incorporated the classical four elements. Alchemists believed that everything in the universe was composed of these elements and sought to understand how they could be transformed and perfected. Their ultimate goal was the creation of the Philosopher's Stone, which could transmute base metals into gold and provide immortality. Alchemy was not just a physical practice, but also a spiritual one. The transformation of the elements in the physical world mirrored the transformation of the soul. In Hermeticism, a tradition linked to alchemy, the elements were seen as part of the divine structure of the universe. By mastering the elements, one could ascend spiritually and understand the mysteries of creation. Indigenous traditions, the elements in Native American spirituality. Many Native American tribes also work with elemental forces, often seeing them as spiritual beings or guides. The four directions are central to many indigenous cosmologies, with each direction being associated with an element, a color, and an aspect of life. For example, in many Plains tribes, north is associated with earth, strength, and endurance. East is linked to air, new beginnings, and clarity. South represents fire, growth, and passion. West is connected to water, introspection, and emotion. In indigenous practices, the elements are honored through rituals, offerings, and dances. These practices are deeply tied to the land and emphasize respect for the balance of nature. Modern magical systems, Wicca and Neopaganism. In modern magical practices, especially in Wicca and Neopaganism, the elements are still viewed as powerful forces that influence our spiritual world. In modern magical practices, especially in Wicca and Neopaganism, the elements are still viewed as powerful forces that influence our spiritual work. The elements are often invoked during rituals, typically within the casting of a circle. Practitioners call upon the elements to protect the space and to imbue the ritual with the appropriate energies. In Wicca, the pentacle, a five-pointed star inside a circle, represents the four elements plus spirit, symbolizing the balance of the material and spiritual worlds. The elements also appear in spells, rituals, and tools such as earth, stones, salt, and pentacles, air, incense, feathers, and wands, fire, candles and athames, water, chalices, and cauldrons. Neopagans often emphasize living in harmony with the elements, honoring them not only in ritual but also in everyday life. The elements have been a part of spiritual and magical practices across different cultures for centuries. While the names and interpretations may differ, the underlying idea of balancing and working with the forces of nature remains universal. By studying these historical and cultural perspectives, you gain a deeper appreciation for the elements and their role in both ancient and modern magic. In the next lessons, we'll explore how to connect with each element in your magical practice, starting with Earth.